Hello everyone, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So the last time I checked my calendar, I'm pretty sure it was January, so I don't know how we're already in June, but here we are. I have read so many books this year so far. I'm pretty sure I've already either almost gotten to or surpassed my Goodreads goal of reading 75 books this year. So I'm probably going to end up moving it to 100 unless I get out of this reading slump that I've been in, then it may need to stay at 75. Either way, this is one of my favorite times of the year because this is kind of like a mid-year check-in where everybody does the mid-year book freakout tag and talks about the books that they've read so far this year. I've got 13 questions to go through today, and I'm going to go ahead and leave the original creators down in the description box just in case you're curious. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the questions. The first question is the best question, and it is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? If you don't already know this, you haven't been around for the past few months. But that book is The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. Oh my goodness. My favorite book of all time has been The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon for the past year or so. And now this book has officially taken the top spot as my favorite book of all time. So not only is it the best book I've read so far this year, it is currently in my #1 favorite book of all time spot. Something you may not know about me, or something you may know about me or may have learned a little bit online, is that I have a pretty bubbly personality. I like to be happy, carefree, and I'm really honestly that kind of person. I do deal with stuff. I do have anxiety and things like that, but honestly I'm a pretty eccentric person, and it's funny that I love books that are so dark and the opposite of me, but that is very much what this is. This is kind of like a psychological horror novel, and it is one of the most interesting books I've ever read. The Last House on Needless Street follows 3 characters, well really a couple of characters, but it follows Ted, who stays inside and watches TV and tries to drink and not worry about the fact that there's gaps in his memory. Then you have Olivia, who is a cat who loves to nap and read the Bible. Then you have Dee, who is the sister of this girl who went missing all these years ago, and she's trying to figure out what happened to her. And then you also have Lauren, who is this teenage girl who can't go outside, not after last time. So you have all these different characters that you're following. This has multiple points of view and a little bit of jumps in timelines as well. This is one of the wildest stories. I can't tell you what it's about because it would spoil the book, and this is one of those stories that you really just need to know surface level, what I just told you, don't know anything going in, because it's gonna blow your mind. I do think that people that don't like this book either don't really like horror, well, it's not really horror. I guess most people don't really like the type of twist that's in this book, but I think it was tastefully and respectfully done. It's my opinion. That's just how I feel. And I love the author's note in the back explaining why she wrote this story and how she came to write this story. So if you have not picked up The Last House on Needless Street yet, I highly recommend it. 5 out of 5 stars, and my favorite book of all time. And the best book I've read so far this year, but favorite book of all time is kind of really putting into perspective how I feel about this book. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far this year? I haven't read very many sequels, and the ones I've read have just been okay, they've been good but not great. So I wanted to go ahead and mention Cece's Journal, Lost and Found. This is the second book in the Cece's Journal duology. I believe this is the end of it. It's got different parts in it. Book 1 has part 1 and 2, and then this book has 3, 4, and 5. And this just follows our main character, Cece. She is a young girl. This is a middle grade graphic novel, and she goes on the sweetest adventures, and all this fun stuff happens with her. This is probably the most beautifully illustrated graphic novel duology that I have ever come across. The illustrations are they're masterpieces. They really are. They're watercolor type. Well, I don't even know if some of them are watercolor, but I don't know. They're just done really well. Just know they're done really well. And this is kind of set up where Cece has these little journal entries, but then she also has the graphic novel format, and you're just following her and her friends. And Cece is an explorer, and she loves mysteries, and she's trying to figure everything out. If she sees a potential for a mystery, she wants to figure it out. And the first novel just absolutely made me weep at the stories. They were so heartwarming and heartfelt, and I love them so much. And I really like the second installment in this as well. If you haven't picked it up and you like middle grade contemporary, mystery, graphic novels, definitely pick this one up. It surprised me so much. I loved both of the books, and I really wish there were more. Question number 3 is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but you really want to? And that one for me is The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. I've been putting this one off because I got in a reading slump and I didn't want that to affect my enjoyment of this book, but I've also been a little bit nervous because I know that this book draws inspiration from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and I have never read Frankenstein, but I've recently read a book that drew from inspiration from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and I wasn't as big of a fan of it. So I'm hoping that even though that plays into the storyline, it won't be too overarching where I don't like it. I love Jennifer McMahon. She is one of my all-time favorite authors, and I really hope to love this one. I feel like I haven't loved one of her books like I've loved The Winter People just yet, so I feel like maybe this will be a good contender, but I am definitely a little bit nervous to read it. It follows this grandmother who is a child psychologist, and she keeps her 2 grandchildren, and one day she brings home a child that she's a psychologist for, and the child ends up making friends with her grandchildren, and they're all part of this monster club. And you have that kind of backstory, and then you have a jump in timeline to present day where there's this woman who hosts a podcast and she talks about monsters. She's traveling to this monster sighting and she believes that monsters are real because her sister actually is one. So I'm very excited to see where this is going to go, what kind of take this is going to have, because I've read a lot of Jennifer McMahon. I have a feeling I know where it will go, but I'm hoping to be surprised by this one and enjoy it as well. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And honestly, I have so many great ones, and I don't want to mention them all because I am going to do a quarter 3 anticipated releases video coming up, and I don't want to just go ahead and talk about all of them now. But one of them that I'm really excited about is a middle grade spooky book, and that is Disappearing House by Ali Melaninko. Now, Ali Melaninko wrote one of my favorite books that I read last year, and that is Ghost Girl. It's this one right here if you haven't seen it before. It's great for people who love small spaces or Coraline or anything like that. This was a really great book. I loved Ali Melaninko's debut, and I'm very excited to read Disappearing House. Now, I am a poor booktuber because I forgot to look up what that book was about, and I can't remember. I know that it has like a real life tie-in, either with grief or with something with mental health. I can't really remember, and I feel really bad because I don't remember. I just know that I'm really excited about it because I loved her book last year, and the cover on this one is super creepy. I remember like it's got a staircase going up this house, and you can see this like creepy dark figure at the top, and I'm just very excited about it. I feel like I'm gonna love that one. Question number 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment of the year? And so far, my biggest disappointment, I've got a couple, but I do want to mention these 2. One, I think, is Gallant. Now, I was looking forward to Gallant, but it wasn't like one I had to have as soon as it came out. My friends were reading it, and so I did get it just about as soon as it came out and started reading it. And I was very disappointed because I've read from Victoria Schwab before and I've really liked what she's written, but this just really wasn't my cup of tea. I felt like the plot was very flat. There wasn't a lot to it. And it read pretty quick, but like, I don't know, I just wasn't super interested in it. But what this book did do was bring me to another book that was a surprise for me. So I'm not going to talk about what this book's about. All of y'all probably know, if you're here watching this video, you've probably seen Gallant around. But it just wasn't my favorite book that she's written, and I was disappointed because I just kind of wanted more from it. But another book that disappointed me is Have You Seen Me by Kate White, which I recently finished in May. And this book was like one book that I just thought, I'm going to love this. This is going to be a book that I love and I want to tell everybody about. And not very many people have talked about it, but it's something that I heard like someone else talk about. They gave it 5 stars. It's one of their favorite books of all time. So I had very high hopes for this one. It's been sitting on my shelf for over a year, and I finally picked it up because it was on my 22 books for 2022. And here we are. I gave it 3 stars. It did not live up to the hype. So it's kind of a suspense novel, a little bit detective-ish, about this woman who has a disassociative state. She has like 2 days missing that she has no idea what happens, and somebody is determined to make sure that she does not find that out. So great premise, but overall, like, as much as I stuck with it because there were cliffhangers at the end of each chapter that made me want more, the payout just wasn't enough. I didn't think it was that great. I had no idea who it was gonna be because there was a bunch of people it could have been, but the whole wrap up of it was just not, it was just kind of lackluster for me. Moving on to my biggest surprise of the year, which is what I was hinting at with Gallant. I've had this book on my TBR for quite some time. It is a children's classic, and it is a book that I never thought that I would enjoy that much, or at least didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. Even while reading it, I knew it was going to be like a 4-star read, but after finishing it, I ended up giving it 5 stars because I could not stop thinking about it. I've read multiple versions of it since then in graphic novel form, retellings, all the different things, and that book is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Most of you guys probably are at least familiar with this book. I don't know if you're familiar with the story, but I had gone my whole life without really knowing what the story was about, and I'm very thankful that I wasn't spoiled for it because I got to enjoy this book for what it was and not knowing anything going in, and it really touched my heart, and I had no idea it would do that. I loved this book. I loved the movie, the 1993 movie, and I've read multiple adaptations of it since then. So if you've not picked up The Secret Garden, I do recommend. There are some quote-unquote problematic things because this was written years and years and years ago. I think it was written in like 1908 or something like that. 1911, I was close. So it was written a long time ago. So of course there can be some things that don't translate over time. But overall as a book, as far as comprehensibility, I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. So as far as that goes, it really holds up over time to me being able to read it and understand it. And I don't know, I just love the story. I loved getting to know these characters. It's about this girl whose parents died and she has to go live with her uncle. And there are secrets. There's a secret garden. There are secret people that pop up. And I don't want to tell you anything more about it. Just know that it kind of explores like anxiety and grief and different things like that. And it has a very special place in my heart. Question number 7 is your favorite new author. That can be a debut author or a new to you author, and I have a couple. So Lorelei Saverin is one. I recently read The Edge of In-Between, really enjoyed that, and I definitely want to pick up more from her because I love her writing style. Laura Simpf is another new author. She is a debut author, also new to me, but I mean, she's debut, so that's why she's new to me. She is one that I have high up on my radar. This book was incredible. If you have not already added this to your wish list or pre-ordered it, you should because it comes out on June 28th and it is fantastic. I cannot wait to read more from this author. I'm rambling too much about these. I was going to go through this quick. So let's continue. And then lastly, also Sally Hepworth is one. Honestly, I need to be putting, where did it go? Sally Hepworth, this book was incredible. Let me just tell you, we're going to come back to this one in a minute. But also Katrina Ward. These are like 2 new favorite authors as well. So I've definitely met some new favorite authors this year. So coming back to this book for question number 8, it is your new favorite character. And I have to talk about Fern from The Good Sister. She is a librarian. She is someone who has sensory processing disorder, and it affects her life, but in not a super bad way. In my opinion, I feel like she lives her life to the fullest, and she is a great character. She's very humorous, and she's just one of my favorite people. So I definitely love her. I don't really get attached to book characters that much because I like plot-driven books a lot of the time, but Fern is definitely one of my new favorites. And I'm going to have to hold this book up again because the other question is, who is your newest fictional crush? And I don't really get fictional crushes, so this is a little bit of a stretch, but I can't say that I didn't love Wally in this book. I mean, personality, like the quirkiness, the sweetness, just who he is. That's all I gotta say. If you've read the book, you know. If you haven't, you need to read the book. The next question is, what is a book that made you cry? And I want to talk about Letters from the Lighthouse by Emma Carroll. I'm hoping that Emma Carroll will become a new favorite author for me, even though I didn't really like Strange Star that I read earlier this year. But this is a 5-star read for me. It definitely surprised me a bit too because I didn't expect to love it as much. It is a middle grade historical fiction that follows a brother and sister. They are evacuated from London to the Devonshire coast. It's February 1941. There's an air raid and they were separated from their sister. Their sister has disappeared and they are worried about her whereabouts and are suspicious of things with their sister as well, about what's going on with her. This is a great story. I did not expect to cry in it. It is very heartfelt. It has some of the best messages that I've ever read in a book in my life. There's so many things you can pick out from this to teach your children or to teach yourself or like to remind yourself as an adult, like, wow, this is so good. This is so right. This is so true. I don't think about this enough, and it is very, very good. It brought me to tears. I highly recommend it if you love historical fiction. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy, and that one for me is The Book Wanderers by Anna James. This was a really sweet story. I did try to continue on in the series, but I'm not really feeling it right now. But I will say that This book was so enjoyable for me. It made me smile, it made me happy. It was kind of like I had to remind myself that this wasn't real life, that stuff like this could not happen in real life, because it all felt so real to me and very magical and whimsical. This is a story about a girl named Tilly who is a book wanderer, which means that she has the ability to see characters. Characters come out of books in different bookstores and she can interact with them, but she can also go into different books and interact in those stories as well. It has a really cool premise. I love the world building of this and how it explains how book wandering works and the backstory and all the different fun things. And there were some twists in this book that I did not see coming, so that was really cool as well. But yeah, I just think this is a really cool book. I hope that I enjoy the rest of the series, but if anything, this book definitely made me happy. Number 12 is the most beautiful book that you have received or bought this year, and I had to whip it back around to The Secret Garden because I got this edition. Do I need it? No. Do we need most of the books we purchase? Probably not, but yeah, but at the same time we kind of do, you know, because we're book nerds and we love books. So this is a gorgeous book. I didn't know it came like this, but this is just like a hard cover of it. It's just another edition of The Secret Garden. I think it's beautiful. I love both of the covers of it, and then also the inside. Like I said, do I need another edition? No. But I want to reread it at some point, and I really want to reread this edition because I love the illustrations throughout this one. It's so beautiful. Like, I don't want to show any spoilery things for if like you've never read this before, but I wish you could see a picture of the garden though. Let's see. I don't want to spoil anything. Okay, here's a picture of the garden. So I just think these illustrations do the story justice, and so when I do a reread of this book, I'm gonna read this one. And the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So these books that I'm going to mention are on my 22 books for 2022, and they're books that I expect to get to by the end of this year. And if I don't, I'm going to be really ticked off at myself because they're books that have been on my TBR for a really long time, and I need to get to them or unhaul them. And I know that I won't unhaul them because I really want to get to them, but they've just been around for a bit too long. So I've got The Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls by Clara LeGrand. I've been talking about this a lot lately. It's a spooky middle grade book. I need to get to it. It's been on my list since I've had Goodreads. Then I have Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. Again, this has been on my list for so long. Everybody has read it and loved it. It is a middle grade fantasy that is very reminiscent of Harry Potter and Alice in Wonderland kind of combined. I did start this book. I didn't finish it because I felt like I was going into a reading slump and I wanted to make sure I was enjoying the book. And I was enjoying the book, but I've got to start the series because they just keep putting out more books and I'm so behind. Then I have Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. I have a couple of other books that I own by Kate Alice Marshall that I really want to get to, but I'm not going to get to them until I get to this one because I need to read this one first, because I think the other, like one or two of the other ones may mention stuff that happens in this book, even though they weren't meant to be connected, I don't think, but they are kind of, maybe, I don't know. But I do want to read this. I do think I'm going to love it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. It is a like spooky YA ghost story type deal. Then I have Watching You by Lisa Jewell. I have been wanting to pick up Lisa Jewell for a long time now just to see if I like her or not, if she's my cup of tea. And this is the book that I own by her. It is one of two books that I really want to read by her. I really want to read, I don't remember what it's called, And Then They Were Gone or something like that. I get that one. I get her book and then R.J. Jacobs' book mixed up with the titles. I can never remember what hers is called. But it's the one that everybody's read. And then I also want to read Watching You, and I don't know. Oh, it's called Then She Was Gone. It's on the cover. Then She Was Gone is the other book that I want to read. And then Watching You. So I own this one. I really need to read it and figure out if I like Lisa Jewell's writing or not. And if I don't, I need to unhaul this baby. And then the last book, which has been on my list, I'm pretty sure, since I started BookTube, is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I have veered off from liking fantasy. When I first started BookTube, I do still like fantasy, but when I first started BookTube, all the BookTubers were reading fantasy, so that's what I started reading, but I have found that I like mysteries and thrillers more, so I just don't read a lot of fantasy unless it's middle grade, and this is a young adult fantasy, and I really want to read it because it has a magical library with grimoires and there's sorceresses, and I just really want to read it, but I haven't yet, and I'm a little intimidated because it is a little thicker of a book than what I prefer to read, and I'm worried that I won't like it because I've just been looking forward to it for so long, but I need to read it. Like, this has to be the year. If I haven't read it by the end of the year, y'all need to scream at me. Okay, y'all, that is it for my mid-year book freakout tag. Let me know down in the comments if you have also done this tag. Leave a link to your video so I can go and watch it, because I always enjoy watching these and just kind of seeing where everybody's reading year is at so far. I think I've read some really great books this year. I'm very satisfied with my year so far. Hopefully I can get out of this current reading slump that I'm in soon so I can read some more great books this second half of the year. I would love to know down in the comments what your favorite book that you've read so far this year is, because I need to add all the good books to my list. So if you don't mind, go down in the comments and let me know what your favorite book or the best book that you've read so far this year is. And thank you as always for watching. I love you all so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.